Welcome to Nightcap Unfiltered, the series that pulls back the curtains on the events, trends, and headlines that dominate the sustainability, tech, and supply chain world. Because the most honest insights never happen on stage. This episode will explore quantum computing's transition from lab curiosity to C suite imperative. We'll challenge the conventional wisdom about quantum timelines, unpack the harvest now, decrypt later security threat most leaders don't know they face, and reveal how quantum and AI convergence will create unassailable competitive moats. This is Nightcap Unfiltered. Hey, okay. Where's your
So,
drink? You have a drink? Let's do a cheers. Raise your glass, lower your guard to truth, serve straight. Salute.
salute. Thanks for having me here.
Yikes. I think I might need to drink something else. So, John, I've known you for a while.
Really long time.
And for folks who don't know who you are, I don't know what rock they've been hiding under. Just start with an introduction, a little bit about yourself. I know you as someone who's been at the forefront of innovation for a long time and really look to you to stay current and also look around the corner. What's ahead? What should I be thinking about in terms of Horizon 2, Horizon 3 innovations?
It's great to see you. And thank you so much for having me on. My name is John Licata. I'm an innovation officer at ServiceNow. And my background is really predicated on Wall Street research and strategy, which has led me to have foresight roles at companies like SAP. And in my role now at ServiceNow, my focus is really to think about what comes next and how do we bridge gaps and get ahead of trends that could bring Horizon 2 and Horizon 2.5 a little closer to today. And quantum has been one of the main focuses in my role, trying to think about what can that do to converge quantum and AI and not keep them mutually exclusive. Sheri, I think that's really something that would be great to double click on for this conversation, is to focus in what does that convergence look like? And that's really my role, and how to think about use cases, looking into strategy and understanding where should we be in this conversation and how do we set ourselves forward. And that was why I published this first quantum readiness report out of ServiceNow to kind of lay the stage for how should we and everyone else start thinking about this.
And John, if we could just step back for a second, if folks are tuning in for the first time or they don't know exactly what quantum is, from the lens of a business technologist, which is what I like to think of you as, could you just break it down for folks in layman's terms?
Yeah, it's a hard conversation to wrap your head around, but if you think about classical computing, living in the world of zeros and ones, that alone can be complicated in the age of AI and the data that's needed to bridge gaps to create new applications that are native in the AI space. With quantum, it's really based on nature. And if you think about, physics and the convergence of, in your background, mother nature and sustainability, and how do you take the world, how the world lives and breathes, and put it into a way that maybe there's lessons to be learned from how pattern recognition and simulation can act that's different from the world of classical computing. And so I look at quantum as this computing environment that could mimic nature. And I think the best way to say is that we're trying to leverage something called qubits, which that's how it's measured, versus classical, which is zeros and ones. But take qubits and bring them into a world of zeros and ones to gain maybe different advantages, different efficiencies, but also maybe look at problems fundamentally different. And if you look at our environment, look at how like the world reacts, how like forests are grown, the seasons change, but it happens in real time. And right now, like AI is limited what their computational focus should and could do. And I think that we have an opportunity right now, but we do need to figure out how to get quantum computing breakthroughs from the lab and into real world applications so people can actually benefit from. And it's a new dynamic. So new architecture needs to be built to allow the lab to be in the consumer's hands.
Yeah, I love that point. And you're always very practical and pragmatic with your insights. And one of the things, obviously, starting with use cases, there's been a lot of hype around AI, Gen AI, agentic, et cetera. And you're telling leaders that they have a runway with quantum. Why should leaders and professionals who are listening right now care? Are we setting them up to go through the same hype cycle and mistake, frankly, that a lot of investment was made in AI and maybe they didn't see the benefit?
Yeah, I think if you didn't notice, I was just rolling up my sleeves because I thought we should really dig into this question. Sheri, I think that there's so many dynamics happening right now around harvest now, decrypt later. And so if you're an enterprise business or you're a company trying to sell trust, how can you do that and not protect customer data? There are cases where asymmetric cryptography is being challenged more near term, and it's already happened. There has been issues that have been navigated, but I think people are trying to understand is when that becomes more mainstream over the next several years, what would companies do when that cryptography is more vulnerable? The fact of the matter is, it is becoming more vulnerable. Gartner has talked about by 2029, 2030, that's going to be more of a fundamental problem that most people have to encounter. And so, if I'm an executive, I want to get ahead of that from a security perspective. So you have the asymmetric to symmetric. That's one category. But I think that we have to understand is AI has been wonderful in certain things, and I think people are still trying to grapple with how can it help businesses with tangible use cases that show tangible and practical ROI. And now bringing quantum in, there are people who are not understanding that quantum can help AI and AI can help quantum. And I think that's where it's not a mutually exclusive conversation. And there are more simulation opportunities, also more trustworthy data can come from the quantum side to allow your agentic AI to get pulled through in a way that's more accurate, trustworthy. So why should you care now? There's a security lens to it. There's a opportunity for competitive advantages that need to be set now. And I think there are finite number of quantum players. You have the hardware players, you have the middleware companies. And I think forging relationships more quickly than several years from now is probably very prudent. I know McKinsey's talked about over the next several years, $2 trillion will be in the quantum marketplace. That's great. But Boston Consulting Group has actually talked about 90% of that money is going to go to early adopters. So if you are running a business, what's your fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders? Shouldn't it be trying to maximize gains and productivity and efficiencies? Looking at quantum needs to help you get there, but it's quantum plus AI. Make no mistake. We have to figure out a way that we can think about an agentic future with quantum-like capabilities to really try to talk about, gaining new ways to think about the future of work. There's an opportunity to leverage agents to be more disruptive, to reimagine what that future of work can look like, what the org charts could look like. And that doesn't mean swap a human here. It means let's try to maximize it and try to put humans in a better lane to be successful. And quantum plays a role in that. That's where I think we need to start thinking of it as a marriage. It's a 1-2 punch. You need to make quantum AI the power couple going forward. And I think for businesses not looking at that, I think they'll quickly find out that they're going to be vulnerable to competitive disadvantages.
Yeah, John, I love that you're saying think of quantum and AI as a power couple, and you've always been at the forefront of emerging innovation and technologies. But for folks who may be skeptical, I love that you brought the board and the shareholders into this, the fiduciary responsibility around growth and innovation. And it's right on the tip of the tongue of most board directors right now. Give me one proof of concept that would make someone immediately stop in their tracks and say, holy shit, this is the moment where quantum and AI delivers something that is completely incredible.
I think the industry has had a problem for 15 to 20 years trying to find that killer use case. So that wow moment to me is not, we shouldn't be looking for like the Chat GPT moment in quantum. However, I do think that we should be looking into the optimization opportunities at hand. Say, like with my Wall Street background, I'm very interested in portfolio management, trying to look into, the opportunity to hedge currencies, to look at optimizing treasuries overall. I think there are opportunities to show value. So if you can go to your board and you can say, you had a pilot, you had research that proved with real numbers, not synthetic data, real numbers, that you were able to save X millions, I think people will start to sit up. We need real data. This is not, let's just do a pilot and we're going to save money. The pilot needs to have legs. People need to have the willing minds to know they can fail and not worry about, well, I'm going to focus on this and my job's at risk if I don't deliver ROI. So I think for companies, just like we did with generative AI and trying to understand where it made sense, I think we just need to understand quantum's not for everything. In some cases, it's actually counterintuitive to think like that. If you had something that you did once a month and you can optimize it maybe once a week rather than once a month, that's a win. But I think people are expecting the grandiose, X, that doesn't exist in today's marketplace. As a former athlete, and I think my former soccer background, to get into the Hall of Fame of baseball, if you hit a single every day, you get in. You wouldn't have to hit the home run. And I think too many people are looking at the home run when it comes to quantum and not seeing the advantage that you can get. And who wouldn't want an advantage? If you were racing a car and your nose was a little bit in front of your rival, guess what? You won. So why are we not looking at the advantage versus the near-term quick sort of revenue gain? We need to have the lens on evolution and how the quantum AI story unfolds. That's the moment I think people need to say, as you say all the time, like, show me. The validation is so important right now. I think there are a lot of headlines, unfortunately, that are happening. There's some great work happening as well, but I think people are scared of the hype. And we as an industry need to do better. We're not just coming up with a headline to get people excited. And the faster we all to take a breath and say, we're here to look at Horizon 3 and reverse engineer it to let us do something today or more near term, I think we'll be all better for it.
Yeah, John, this is just incredible. And again, I love your example around show me, and that this is something that can feel very enormous, maybe even for folks listening who might not understand the application of quantum, even in the example in financial services and capital markets. I can think of several use cases happening right now in integrated risk management where companies, and I'll leave names out to protect the innocent, but they're looking at portfolio risk management and bringing in planetary intelligence. So they're getting a lot of data feeds, if you think about Earth as a digital twin, and de-risking their portfolio in that way, and also using that in their cost of capital and their lending rates. So just one example, just to piggyback on what you said. Also in your roadmap, you talk about quantum centers of excellence and crypto agility strategies, quantum literate workforces, governance frameworks, all the things that you need to properly stand up this capability in the near term. Here's the question. It's 2030. I'm the CEO of a quantum and AI ready enterprise. Walk me through my day. What am I doing differently than what I'm doing right now? And what problems may have disappeared or what new opportunities have emerged?
Earlier you mentioned the word risk and compliance. And I think if I'm in that role several years from now, I feel more comfortable navigating that environment where you have NIST requirements here in the United States, operational resiliency efforts like DORA in Europe. So if I'm in a role, I'm feeling more comfortable about the ability to meet the trust that we talked about earlier. That trust piece would help me. But I understand that the regulations are like kicking a field goal through a moving goalpost. They change a lot. And so my strategy has to be more nimble. So maybe instead of being AI native alone, it's AI plus quantum native. And I'm also looking into the vast amounts of opportunities around simulations to manage risk. And I think that's a big part. You mentioned that word, and I feel like we should spray paint it across the screen right now, because risk management is going to be an extremely big notion when we're talking about managing, for example, in finance, fiat currencies, and then digital currencies, stable coins. I speak to banks regularly and understanding how Some of the banks already have their own coin and more are coming. So how do you manage risk? I think that we need to think about what's my role as an executive to help leverage quantum AI to make new strategic decisions. And look, I speak to Gina, our CFO, and Gina is really talking about how finance and strategy are coming closer. And I couldn't agree more. And I've been talking about this for a while. So if I was in that role, I'm going to leverage the quantum AI computations more regularly to think about where we're going to put capital. And should it be in a geographic area, or is the machine actually telling me don't go in place A, go to place C because it makes more money in that area, or the regulatory pressure is heating up. And so heat maps being generated and I'm being able to navigate because it's made more easy for me to do so in that executive chair. And today that's very complex. And there's a massive amount of hierarchy when it comes to business strategy, making acquisitions, looking at the role of culture, something you and I have talked about on many different levels over the years.
For different reasons.
Very different reasons. But how do you bring in the role of unstructured data into managing people and also expanding people and augmenting people and allowing people to thrive? So if I'm a leader, I'm looking into this world where enablement is at my fingertips and I'm actually leveraging quantum plus AI, and my AI control tower is now looking into quantum capabilities that I think were quite cool as we're thinking about using data in a way that's strategic. I think quantum is not going to solve everything, but it's going to allow us better ways to deal with those in advance so we can position appropriately. That will give some executives some better sleep patterns in the next 5 years.
Amazing. So, John, the time has flown by. Any final thoughts on quantum, the marriage of quantum and AI, and the future in 2030 as you see it?
I think that we have to really acknowledge that this is a long-term journey, but it must start now. I think there's a lot to learn. I think creating a strategic ecosystem for your business early is a competitive advantage. I think the ability to deliver trust is something that's not going to be a nice have. It's going to be a consumer expectation. And if that's the case, then we need to figure out what this quantum AI dynamic could really look like. So test, fail fast, and try again. But I do feel like we still have to understand that the journey must start with putting people in place to acknowledge that we have quantum as an opportunity on a roadmap as part of the organization, and really fuel the opportunity that I know it could yield. And I think that this is something where the opportunities are really boundless, but we got to get the tech out of a science lab and we need to figure out a way to bring it to the enterprise.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. Foresight, an innovation leader, friend, and innovation officer at ServiceNow. It's been a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you.